So it wasn't that long ago that I felt absolutely stuck. I remember just a couple years ago wanting to achieve my fitness goals, but just being dragged back into the same patterns over and over and over again. I entered into a really tough cycle of yo-yo dieting where I would spend all week dieting really hard, and then on the weekend I would binge eat and go out and drink with my friends and reset all of my progress. I did this for months and months and months, and honestly it was so exhausting. It felt like I knew I wanted to make progress, I knew what to do to make progress, but I just couldn't apply it for a long enough period of time to actually see results. And this led to me just feeling stuck. So in today's video, guys, I'm going to tell you exactly how I was able to go from being stuck to actually making consistent progress. And the truth of the matter is, when I actually started making consistent progress and building up momentum, it felt easier than when I was stuck. So I'm going to tell you exactly how I made that transition from being stuck to finally making progress, to finally achieving my goals, and exactly how you can also do that as well. All right, guys, and just so you know, this is what I used to look like. I just want to give you a little bit of proof that I was able to make a transformation. You can see I just had a pretty average to below average physique, had a good amount of body fat on me, didn't really have very much muscle. But through changing just a few simple things that I'm going to share with you in this video, I was able to completely transform my physique. So I was able to lose a bunch of body fat, gain some muscle, and just overall live a higher quality of life, which is really what we all want. I'm going to explain exactly how I did it in this video. And the whole point, guys, is that if I can do it, anyone can do it. All right, so there's going to be 3 sections to this video, 3 pillars, and these are the main pillars that I use to completely transform my physique. I would say that the most important one is actually the last one, so make sure you guys stick around for that because that one's going to be pretty critical. But the first thing I wanted to go over is the actual diet. So the best way to see the quickest results is to switch to only high quality foods in your diet. This is what's going to transform your physique, really your mind, just how you feel, overall mental clarity. You'll see the quickest results from changing your diet to high quality foods, and I'll explain what I mean. So a good test to know if something is something you should be eating or not is if you couldn't eat it 200 years ago, don't eat it. And the reason why that's a good test is because it instantly eliminates all the highly processed foods that you get from fast food restaurants or ultra processed foods that just are providing no nutritional value to you, but are really high in calories and low in quality. That's the kind of stuff we want to avoid. So if you couldn't eat it 200 years ago, don't eat it. I think tracking calories is a good skill to have, but if you're just a beginner and you don't want to track calories, here's a really good way to switch your diet and get into great shape without having to worry about calories. Simply just eat as much meat, eggs, fruits, or vegetables as you want. Don't eat anything else, and you'll see and feel changes super fast. It's like the most basic diet you can do is literally just eat as much as you want of meat, eggs, fruits, and vegetables, and you will lose weight. You will get into great shape by doing that. And ultimately, we know that the reason why people are morbidly obese, the reason why obesity is at its highest is just because the proclivity of ultra highly processed foods. You'll also notice that the cravings for the ultra processed foods lessen significantly as you change your diet. So it's almost like a withdrawal a little bit. You know, you stop eating that stuff and you want it, you crave it, but after a little while, the cravings do go away quite a bit. Like when I think about eating sugar or candy after I've been dialed in on my diet, it doesn't even really sound that good. And the best way I can describe it is you actually get addicted to the feeling of being healthy. And I mean that in the best way possible. Feeling healthy is absolutely addictive because you actually understand and get a sense for how your body feels when it's running well. And so if you eat the bad food and you feel what it's like to be like not feeling tip-top shape anymore, you're like, oh dude, I don't want to do this anymore. Like you actually get really addicted and want to continue feeling at tip-top shape. So it does become much easier as you get dialed in on your diet because you just actually enjoy the way that you feel. Because who would have known that it feels good to have your body running optimally. The next thing we're going to talk about is the training. I always recommend weightlifting for everybody. I would recommend weightlifting 3 to 5 times a week for 45 minutes to 1 hour. You don't got to go crazy. You don't got to go in there for 2 or 3 hours a day, but 45 minutes to an hour is totally fine. Just focus on good intensity. You want to get to failure or close to failure on at least a few of your exercises, you should be pushing yourself hard enough so that when you're doing your workouts, it should be pretty intense, because that's really what is going to stimulate muscles, is intense workouts. But ultimately, consistency is the most important thing. So just make sure you're showing up. I would recommend prioritizing weight training over cardio. It's fine if you want to do cardio, but make sure you do the weight training first. We want to prioritize gaining muscle and preserving muscle as much as we possibly can. And another great way to get into great shape is to just shoot for more activity in general in your life. It doesn't have to be crazy, just generally more movement. I'm not saying you have to get on the treadmill and run 5 miles a day, but adding more steps into your day-to-day routine is a really powerful tool. I've heard this quote, but I think it's true, that walking is the king of fat loss, because walking is a really great way to have low impact, low intensity cardio, but that does add up over time. And if you focus on it, you can get lots of steps in your day-to-day life. For me, I make it pretty simple. I get good amount of steps from just what I do in my day-to-day life, but then I also start my day off with a 30-minute walk and end my day with a 30-minute walk. And that pretty much guarantees that I'll hit close to about 10,000 steps a day, because those walks combined with just the walking that I do in my day-to-day life add up quite a bit. And that's the whole point, is it really is the little things that add up. It's just the small micro decisions that it's really not that hard to do, but if you just do them over and over consistently, then you'll notice a big difference. And ultimately, your diet and your training should work together to create a good physique. Your diet and your training should be cohesive in forming the physique that you want. And then lastly, guys, the most important thing to making progress is just having a vision for yourself. We want to shift from the could to the will. And what I mean by that is we want to start thinking about it as something that is going to happen, rather than something that might happen or maybe happen or could happen. We want to actually, in our minds, have the self-belief necessary to achieve our goals. It all starts with self-belief, because if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't actually believe that you are capable of achieving your goals, if you don't believe you're the kind of person who is able to do what they say that they're going to do, you will inevitably, consciously or subconsciously, self-sabotage yourself. You actually need to have a genuine, burning belief that you can achieve your goals. And a great way to do that is by having a vision, actually envisioning who you want to be, actually being honest with yourself about who you want to be, the kind of person you want to be. And if you could have anything in the world, ask yourself, what would that thing be? Take off all the self-limitations, all the limiting self-beliefs, and actually just ask yourself, if I could have anything I want, what would that be? And you really have two options. You can either make excuses or you can make progress. And if you've ever heard the quote, whether you believe you can do something or whether you believe you can't, you're usually right either way. And it just takes a little bit of cutting out the BS. You need to honestly ask yourself, be really honest with yourself and say, who do I actually want to be? If I cut out all the excuses, all the fluff, all the bullshit, who do I actually want to be? And what limiting self-beliefs are stopping me from being that person? Who do I want to be, and what's stopping me from getting there? You need to be really honest with yourself and ask yourself those two things. Who do I want to be, and what self-limiting beliefs are stopping me from being that person? And some very common lies that people tell themselves are things like, oh, well, that person's different. I can't do that. That's not for me. I'm okay with not making progress. I'm okay with where I'm at. And you have to ask yourself, how much do you genuinely actually believe that stuff? And how much are you actually defending those lies? Because not only will people accept those things because it makes them feel better about their own inadequacies, but then they'll start defending those lies, because the moment that they accept that these things are lies, the moment that they accept that the fact that you can achieve your goals, the moment you can accept that you can get into really good shape, the moment that you accept that you're actually not very happy with where you're at, then you expose your inadequacies. And a lot of people don't want to do that because it's very humbling. When you actually accept that these things that you've been telling yourself are lies, then it exposes inadequacies within you, which is very uncomfortable, because it means that you realize that you are not where you want to be, and it implies that you need to take actions that might be uncomfortable. And if you've ever heard the quote, it's easy to fool a man, it's impossible to convince him that he's been fooled. The reason why what this all comes down to, guys, is the difference between pride and humility. If you're unwilling to change, if you're defending these lies that if you were being really honest with yourself deep down, you know are lies, it's because that comes from a place of pride. You're afraid to admit that these are excuses and that they are lies. But being willing to change, it requires humility. You have to be able to say to yourself, I do understand that I'm not where I want to be, but I'm humble enough to admit that and start working on myself. I think that's why humility is a great antidote to lying to yourself, because ultimately, if you have humility, then you'll be humble enough to be able to tell yourself the truth. And I say this not to like sound like a mean person or anything like that, but I say this as someone who is just being genuinely very truthful with you, who believes that you are a human being worthy of dignity and respect, so much so that I can actually tell you these things, because I believe all humans should be able to live their life in the most meaningful and fulfilling way possible. And I think that that all starts with having a healthy body, a healthy mindset. And so there's a difference between pleasing somebody and telling them the truth and doing what's actually good for them. And I think that if I were someone who wanted to please you, I might just sit here and tell you, oh, well, those excuses are valid. It is just your genetics. You'll never have the genetics. You're right about that. It's just your genetics. Other people, they just have better genetics. But I don't really care about just pleasing people. I don't want to just please people. I want to tell them the truth because I actually care about people. And the truth is that you are worthy of dignity, respect, and you should be able to live the most meaningful and fulfilling life that you possibly can. And that starts with having a healthy body and mind. And ultimately, the foundation of that is telling yourself the truth that you are able to achieve your goals that you want if you just put in the work and the effort and the time. I hope that makes sense. Now, if you're wondering about the specific exercises, specific diets, a lot of people ask me about that. I have a huge announcement, guys. I actually just created the Aesthetic School. It's my personal school that includes the Aesthetic Protocol, which is my book on dieting, fitness, covers everything that I know about the physical. Then there's the Aesthetic Mindset, which is about discipline and good habit building. It covers everything mental that you need to be able to achieve your goals and your dream physique. And then it includes 2.5 hours of video lectures in which we cover both the books and talk about how to specifically implement it into your day-to-day routine. And you'll be able to personally interact with me in the community tab too. I'll be hanging out over there. So come ask me some personal coaching questions. I'll be able to help you out with your personal goals. And lastly, as a celebration of launch week, the Aesthetic School will be 50% off until November 10th. So I'll leave that linked if you're interested. Go check that out. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.